It is fascinating to see how these two phones approach night mode, because there are some really big differences between them in how they try and expose the scene. The Xiaomi always tends to brighten things up, whereas the Galaxy S20 Ultra leaves a lot of things dark. I think both of the phones, as you'll see in the test, are capable of producing fantastic night mode images, but they certainly are very, very different from each other. The Xiaomi uses a low light mode automatically when you are in dark scenes, whereas on the S20 Ultra, it takes normal photos and you have to go specifically into night mode if you want to use that feature. This picture is normal mode on both of the phones, and just have a look how different on the S20 Ultra it is when you do switch to that night mode. The scene has changed dramatically on the S20, but on the Xiaomi, between night mode and normal mode, it's pretty similar. The building color here did change. It isn't a difference in the phones. Look how the S20 Ultra keeps the foreground buildings dark, whereas the Mi 10 tries to brighten that building up a little bit more. That is the theme of this video and the difference between them. The S20 keeps things dark. The Mi 10 brightens everything up. Notice again how dark the foreground is on the S20 in normal photo mode, but it's much brighter on the Xiaomi. And switching into night mode, the S20 brightens the foreground up just like the Xiaomi does. And the difference is much more noticeable here as well. You can see the Xiaomi brightens up those shadows, and I think exposes the image a little bit better here. There is no right or wrong in how these phones are doing it, and actually you can change the exposure of these a little bit after you take the photo. But when it comes to the front camera, I think there is a clear winner. In video, actually, they are kind of more or less the same. Not very good, but considering there was literally no light whatsoever, it's actually not that bad. The S20 Ultra actually does have a dark mode on the selfie camera, and when you are taking selfies, pictures that is, it definitely shows, and it is a big advantage for that phone. If we compare a couple of selfies side by side, again in really bad lighting, the normal mode on both isn't that great, but you can switch to night mode on the S20 and it makes a huge difference. Night mode versus Xiaomi's normal front selfie mode, and the S20 just benefits from that night mode, giving it a much crisper image overall. This is a back camera test on both, and those colors just seem a little bit richer on the S20 Ultra. But coming to the back cameras, look at the incredible difference between how these two phones are exposing this scene. This is an absolutely fascinating difference between how the two phones handle low light scenes. This is the S20 Ultra. You can see it's just so dark. Moving to the Xiaomi, and it brightens up the entire scene. On first inspection, you may think, well, the Xiaomi is doing a much better job. If we compare them and look closely, you'll notice the amount of noise in the Xiaomi's video. The S20 Ultra has realized there isn't enough light, and so is just happy to keep the scene dark whilst reducing the amount of noise in the image. The Xiaomi, however, just wants to brighten the scene at all costs, so you get a much brighter image that you can actually see, but you can see it adds a ton of noise in there. The S20 Ultra, by contrast, does have far less noise in the scene, but it's just so dark. Obviously, the S20 Ultra is more representative of what it was really like and has less noise in the video, but normal people just shooting videos in these low light situations would want a naturally brighter image so they can actually see what they're shooting. In any case, a fascinating difference between how the two phones handle that situation. Another good example of how these two phones can really turn dark into light. There was no light here. It was really, really low light, and both of these phones brighten up the image. The S20 for me stands out. It looks really contrasty and crisp. And this is a situation where those contrasty blacks really play to the S20 Ultra's advantage. And again, you'll see a big difference here between the S20's normal mode and switching into night mode changes the exposure of the image completely. It's slightly annoying on the S20 that the night mode is in this more section, then you have to specifically choose night mode. But it's good that you can choose night mode on the ultra wide and into the zoom cameras as well. That's really useful. I'd like Samsung to put the night mode down near the capture button. Xiaomi, for me anyway, put it in a better spot. You just have to scroll right a couple of times to get to the night mode, and then you can easily shoot your images from there. But it's no night mode on the ultra wide on this camera. Video during low light situations, especially for smartphones, is almost impossible. There just isn't enough light. Pictures, however, they do a much better job, and the S20 can go up to a 13-second exposure, which is what I got on this shot. There are still limitations to smartphone cameras in night mode. They definitely don't have the magic wand to make everything look good when there literally is no light. But throughout the test, it is definitely noticeable. Xiaomi just want to brighten up the image at all costs. Everything that's dark, they want to brighten up, even if they do add a little bit of noise. Whereas on the Samsung, they're happy to leave dark areas dark if they think they cannot lighten it up enough. There are some advantages and disadvantages to this. I think it works in the S20's favor here, creating a more punchy image that's more pleasing on the eye. But if we switch to this video, you can see how much detail is left out of this image as compared to the Mi 10. Sometimes you do want the image brightened up so you can actually see something rather than that really dark image that the S20 shot there. Overall though, night mode is incredibly difficult. Cameras without any light don't function very well. And I think overall these phones, even though they have different approaches, can produce extremely good images at night, especially for photo. Subscribe for all the latest tech news and videos. That's it for now, but I'll see you in the next one.